BSides DC would like to thank all of our sponsors, and a special thank you to all of our speakers, volunteers, and organizers for making 2018 a success.
So, there's been a lot of changes over the last couple years. We gave this talk out at DEF CON, and after talking to some of the organizers, we thought, you know, it'd be good to bring this talk East Coast. So, Wi-Fi, we run the Wireless Village, so we're kind of involved in this stuff on a pretty regular basis. Wow, that's way off the screen. Hey, so who cares about this slide anyway? So I do some stuff. I've been doing some stuff in wireless for quite a while. We started the Wireless Village about 15 years ago at DEF CON, and it's been going ever since. We've been here for 4 or 5 years now at this point. We do a lot of the conferences local. Half of what I say is probably going to be a bunch of bullcrap, so you know, this is just some stuff that says that what I said is right. So thanks to the GDPR, we created this slide. More so, we created this sticker. So we had this sticker all over DEF CON this year. All your RF belong to us. We can hear just about anything. RF is so prevalent these days. With Bluetooth, Bluetooth low energy, IoT, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth low energy, it's literally everywhere. But because we've been working with this stuff for so long, we've been able to kind of keep up with the times. So you see the dongles up here. I think we were joking. On the way over here, we had a Suburban full of stuff. And I think I counted 87 radios in our car. And that was like about almost normal for a normal day of work. So between software-defined radios, Bluetooth radios, Wi-Fi radios, gosh, now Zigbee, and we're even dealing with some non-Bluetooth and non-wireless, non-Bluetooth 2.4 gigahertz signals. It's just an insane amount of stuff that we have to carry. So what we wanted to do is kind of bring this talk to you guys to show you some of the tools that are out there, some new tools that will allow some really, really cool capabilities, and also kind of just give you an idea of what's going on that we're seeing that's out in the field. So Bluetooth and Bluetooth low energy, BLE. Does anybody understand the difference between the two? Because most people don't get the difference between the two. Bluetooth has been around forever, since version 1. I don't know if you guys remember those little Linksys dongles that they came out with originally, had the little antenna on it. Well, we figured out a long time ago that if you take that wire off, clip on an SMA cable, solder it to the board, we can put a high gain antenna on it. And we were getting almost a quarter mile with Bluetooth. Bluetooth by standard is about 100 feet. So that was cool, that was fun. You know, we were kind of hacking Bluetooth. Was able to, early days, get my car to start. I had a Mini Cooper that had a Bluetooth radio in it, and it actually was tied into the system. We were actually able to get it start remotely with the Bluetooth radio. So early days of car hacking before Charlie, tried to crash the car into the Michigan Turnpike. So Bluetooth low energy is fairly recent upcoming. Bluetooth low energy kind of took where Bluetooth was, gives you similar range, but the power can go for months on a button battery. So Bluetooth low energy, you're going to start finding in watches. You're going to start seeing in Fitbits. Marketing devices are actually the biggest thing. I don't know if you guys can see it. This little guy, it's about 3/4 high and about the size of a quarter, is a Bluetooth low energy transmitter. Now, we use these for the Foxes, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but marketing companies use these to advertise their websites, to give information out. This will go directly to your phone. Your phone will pair to it, and it will actually give you a message on your screen. Hey, you're in Walmart. You just recently bought toilet paper, so you might need some hand sanitizer too. I don't know. Some kind of marketing people will come up with something that'll work. But this will literally last for 3 months or 4 months off a little battery. They're low power, but they react a little bit differently than the way Bluetooth does. So the air is kind of crazy right now. There's 2.45 gigahertz. AX, 802.11ax is coming out, and they're looking to go from 1 gigahertz to 7 gigahertz over Wi-Fi. We then compare that with 2.4 gigahertz. We had to jump out of 2.4 for Wi-Fi and go to 5 gigahertz because the 2.4 space was so polluted. So now we're sitting here with Bluetooth devices, and Bluetooth low energy, all polluting the same space. So we said, you know what? This would be really fun to mess with. Bluetooth is everywhere. So when we turn a couple things on, if you have a Bluetooth device on, we're not going to do anything to it, but leave it on because it'll be funny to see who we can pick out in the audience based on their names. There's a couple different radios. So up here on this, I've got an internal radio. The internal radio is just what came with my laptop. It's a Bluetooth 5. I think it's an Intel 8500 card. We've got a UD100, which is an industrial Bluetooth radio. This gives us, with the right antennas, about a half mile at this point. We've got an Ubertooth, which gives you a little bit better job with some of the other tools that exist, with some of the low energy. But what it does is it actually enumerates out that low energy device and gives us more data. Really, really cool, especially because of how prevalent it is. Gosh, these screens are horrible. Yeah, so I don't want to read this to you, but it's a technology that uses 2.4 to 2.485 gigahertz. It's, again, very, very prevalent. The problem we have is the Bluetooth special interest group is what runs it, not the IEEE. So Bluetooth kind of goes off in all these weird tangents, which is great, but it's not standard across the board. So one radio may go a little, 30 feet, another radio and another device might go 100. So the standard we have to actually play with a little bit to get some direction finding. What all of this is rolling up to is going to be how to track devices. So we're trying to figure out different ways of doing this based on weird standards that alter. So it's everywhere, and it's unmonitored. How many of you have Bluetooth IDSs with you, right? Oh, really? Who makes it? Okay, cool. Would love to talk to you, because Bluetooth monitoring is really, really hard. And Bluetooth monitoring is hard because of the way Bluetooth pairs. So Bluetooth Low Energy, on the other hand, actually runs a little bit differently, but the radios are incorporated into the Bluetooth devices on the actual laptops. Your speakers, your headphones, your cars, those kinds of things, all are running at these different frequencies within the same space with different profiles. So a couple years ago, actually I think it's been 2 years now, Rick Farina, Zero Chaos, one of our partners in the Wireless Village, developed a tool called Blue Hydra. Who's used it? Who's used? Okay. So this will be a new tool for you. It is on his GitHub page, Zero Chaos, Blue Hydra. It is incorporated into Pentoo, which is the operating system we use for our capture the flags. But what Blue Hydra does is something really cool. It actually takes the airspace that it can see and puts distance vectors based on power into your screen so you know how far a device is away from you. Now this is going to work with Bluetooth Low Energy and Bluetooth, and it's going to use either one of these radios. It kind of bounces back and forth for you. When you kick it off, you kind of get the splash screen, and they did something earlier to make it a little bit easier to see. Wow, that's perfect. There we go. Can you roll it forward, or is it locked in? Hey, there we go. Awesome. Hacking the con. Woo! All right. So it's going to give you a whole bunch of labels. So it's going to give you whether it's Classic 4.0, Bluetooth Low Energy, or Low Energy 4.1, which is a newer version of Bluetooth Low Energy. So instead of talking about it, I'd much rather show you. So hopefully, let's see. It's this one. Nope. There we go. So we kick off Blue Hydra. I can actually go screen now. Does that work? Nope, not quite. There we go. All right, so within the space that we're seeing right now, and the colors are a little off there, not sure if the camera's going to see it, you've got a whole bunch of devices going off the screen. Let's see, Slim, there we go, there's one. So Slim has a laptop. If Slim wants to raise their hand and let us know who that is, that would be kind of cool and maybe fun. But these devices are actually beaconing out based on your friendly name of your device. The fact that it's Bluetooth Classic is going to come into play a little bit later, so we'll keep an eye on that. The video camera is here. There's a Mevo. I think that's this guy over here. Somebody's carrying a tile around. If I unpause this, we're going to scan back again. Some Emicore devices, some in the marketing. Somebody's wearing a charge. There's Anonymous going across on their smartphone. So you kind of get the idea. This is up in the air. This is data that's going across. And in testing this tool, we were actually testing it at a coffee shop, and I live up in Baltimore. One of the people that was actually running for Congress had their phone paired to their name, Tesla, also paired to their iPhone, paired to their Bose headsets, very, very vain person because every single device they had was in their name. So I went up to him and I said, hey, sir, just FYI, I do computer security, do a lot of stuff in the RF and wireless space. I could track you like to your bedroom right now. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I showed him what I was. Well, he had no idea. Well, that kind of leads us to where this problem starts to exist. Tracking a human based on their digital persona is getting easier and easier and easier because of all these devices. When we take their Bluetooth persona and we take their Wi-Fi persona, their beacons that are coming out of their phones and their laptops and everything else, and then we use something like Wiggle online where we can actually go on and say, hey, you know what, wiggle.net, I want to know what's in the 21642 zip code, and I want to know what's on Main Street. Well, all of a sudden, these names pop up. Or I want to search based on an SSID or a wireless friendly name for Governor blah blah's Wi-Fi. Well, you can get addresses for people. You can do reconnaissance on people and places online before you've ever even seen that RF signal. So RF used to be you had to be in that space. And that's what we all loved about it, is you had to be fairly close but didn't have to plug in. Now we can actually go online and track some of this stuff. So with this tool, Blue Hydra, you run it. Let me hit, try to stop it. Let's see, it's off the screen again, isn't it? Just pull it up. Live demos on stage, always work, and it's always AV that's the fun part. So in this case, what I did was I put no info in. If I just run Blue Hydra by itself, it's going to scroll across the screen. It's going to scroll in green across the screen and not be very visible to anybody, so that's not helpful whatsoever. Let's see. All right, so let me let that sit for a second. As they start to go out of green, they'll start to come up onto the screen. So what we're seeing here isn't too helpful whatsoever. Here we go. Now they're starting to pop up. So what it ends up doing is it comes up green. Green means it was just seen. It then goes to yellow. Yellow means, hey, it's been out for a couple seconds or more, and then it goes to white when it starts to time out. I have this in speed mode, so it's just rolling through them as quickly as it can. Now what I can also do with this is set filters up, set filters to specific targets if I have them, and start tracking that way. This is all just Bluetooth that's in space of these radios right now. When we sit over in the village, it's even crazier. What's interesting, though, is occasionally you'll see a range come up. Let's see if this guy's on. There we go. So on the right-hand side, there's a range button, 0.06 meters. That's this little guy here. That's this little device. It gives me the manufacturer name, the RSSI or the power, and then tells me a range. Well, it actually takes the range of the device based on the power that it's transmitting from, based on the OUI, based on the MAC address, and it will give you a distance vector away from that. Now, this gets really cool because now we can not only target something, hey, somebody's in this room, but somebody's in this room and they're 0.06 meters from me. Well, there's not much in there, so you can start tracking. We play a Bluetooth version of Capture the Flag and a wireless fox hunt with exactly these tools to get people to start seeing, hey, by the way, if you've got devices on you, they're not going to be as secure as you think, even if the device is completely locked down, because it's beaconing out. And we have tools to start seeing this. This makes it fun for us, makes it really hard for the contestants, because unfortunately, when they're out in all this space, they're running around, they're trying, the fox is trying to run away from them, they're trying to chase it, and they're in between all these, big bodies of water, which does horrible attenuation to radio, and you can't catch it as easily. So this is a game that we play. If you're interested in it, stop by the village. We can show you a little bit more how to do it. But this is one of the tools that we use. Zero did an amazing job setting this up, and it works really, really well. Again, it's on Pentoo by default, and it's on GitHub as well. Let's see. Oh, there we go. All right, so that's Blue Hydra. Something new, though. So layer 2 is an interesting beast. Layer 2 is interesting because it's dealing at the physical layer. Well, Bluetooth works at the physical layer too, just like wireless does. So we're always dealing with MAC addresses. So I was kind of thinking through this. It's like, hey, layer 2 is kind of cool. Who's heard of layer 2 ping? L2 ping? Networking guys, telecom? Okay. So L2 ping goes across layer 2 on Bluetooth using the physical layer to attach to a device that has an open socket. I was like, that's kind of neat, but what can we really do with this? So we got to talking, and I was like, hey, Rick, what can we actually accomplish with this? I'd like to start tracking something. He's like, well, L2 ping is actually used in Blue Hydra to do some of the vector testing, but it's really just there as another check. It's like, hey, is it there? Yup, it's there. Okay, cool. So this is just the man page from L2 ping, but as we're reading through it, it's like, so I can tell L2 ping to go out of a specific radio. So if I have HCI 0, which is typically your internal Bluetooth, okay, that's neat. But what if I start sticking external Bluetooth radios or something that's going to advertise itself as Bluetooth? Okay, cool. We can add this in. Packet size, packet count, not so big. Ping flood, If we use attack F in this, we can now flood that device and start getting data back. Okay, this is kind of cool. So I'm driving down the road, and I'm thinking, we can track this. Crap. Oh, that's right. So Bluetooth uses a master-slave connection. So you have your master device, which is the device connecting to the peripheral. Then you've got the peripheral. Well, the peripheral actually takes the MAC address of the master device when they connect, which doesn't allow you to track the peripheral anymore. So it kind of disappears. But we still have, some information. Well, what we found was the only time these devices come into Blue Hydra is when they're in pairing mode. So if you have your phone, and the use case we use and we absolutely love is we were on a train, and everybody gets on the train. Who takes the metro or the train sometime? We're in DC, right? Everybody does. They pop out, they sit down on the train, they grab their bag, they throw their headphones on, they pair their headphones, and they start riding, and they fall asleep, and nobody talks to anybody anymore. It's really cold world. But they pair with their radio. So it's like, cool, okay. So during that pairing, we're able to see the device. Neat. That gives us a little bit of information. It gives us the MAC address of the Bluetooth and or the Bluetooth low energy or Bluetooth device that they're connecting to. This is cool, but it really doesn't solve our problem because when Bluetooth isn't pairing, it is dead silent. It does not talk whatsoever. In fact, let's see, unpause that, and it's huge. My Apple Watch uses a Bluetooth radio. I use an Apple Watch for a very specific reason. A, because my wife is an absolute Apple fanboy, and B, because it's actually a really comfortable, decent watch. What we found is they're also a heck of a lot more secure than Android watches. And the reason behind it is the Apple Watch doesn't beacon out ever. So you will not see my Apple Watch pop through this screen unless I do something to it to make it pair. Well, Apple Watches, Fitbits, all kinds of things like that are interesting to watch because in many cases, they're named the same as the person using it. So this one says Rick's Apple Watch. I mean, there's very little places to change that. The Garmin's and some of the others will either say they're a Garmin, or if they're paired to another types of phone, and the phone has the right name, it's going to give up that person's name. So it's like, maybe we can figure out a way to get some information. So I was driving down the road taking my kids to a swim meet because they swim, and that means I'm in the car literally all the time. And we had this idea. I was like, hey, dude, listen, we need to come up with a way to track phones. I deal with some folks that need to track people on a relatively regular basis, and phones are the biggest problem because, happily or sadly, everybody carries a phone. People use burners, people use repeat phones, people use phones that aren't as available as, maybe they're, another device that they might have. They're not always carrying their laptop, they're not always carrying their tablet. Most people have, does anybody not have a phone on them right now? We're doing this whole security conference thing, leave my phone at home, turn off all electronics. Okay. Everybody probably has their phone with them because that's how you're on Discord and Slack and Terminal and work and everything else that you're doing. So we're like, a phone is a pretty standard thing on a person. Well, cars are now becoming a lot neater too because cars have Bluetooth in them. Cars have Bluetooth in them because a lot of states regulated that you have to have some sort of hands-free device in order to drive and talk on the phone. Everybody talks on the phone all the time. So we're like, okay, so we got a car and we got a phone. Those are two really, really nice things to start adding to our dossier of tracking. So Blue Sonar happened. We called it Submarine initially because what it's doing is it's using a layer 2 ping to validate that a device exists. What we found that was really interesting is every device with a Bluetooth radio that's on will answer a ping if it is pinged. So think about that for a second. Your computer has to be on a network. It always has a wireless radio, but it doesn't always on a network. You can't ping your wireless radio externally. But we can ping every single Bluetooth device that exists if we know the MAC address. And we get the MAC address a couple ways. We can get it when somebody is pairing, and that's part of the reason. We can also get it when we scan an area over time. When a device comes on, Bluetooth radio beacons out. When something pairs, it beacons out. They pair when people get in their cars. They pair when they get home and it connects to their smart home, their hub, their speakers, their Sonos, whatever it is. It pairs every time that screen comes up for Bluetooth. So if somebody goes to turn their Bluetooth off, it still pops up broadcasting out the Bluetooth because the manufacturers of these devices want life to be easy for you. They want you to be able to say, I want to connect to this, and when I open up my Bluetooth, I want it to connect, and it will do that for you. Well, that's kind of a problem, and it's a problem because now we have that bit of information. So as soon as it stops pairing, it goes silent, and you can't see it. Well, again, talking about my Apple Watch, yep, that's still flying. Let's kill that guy. Am I not typing? Yeah, I'm not typing. Demo, there we go. All right, so what I did was I set up this device, or this demo, with my watch, and I did my watch for a really interesting reason. For demo purposes, it does a really good job. So, Blue Sonar is looking for my watch, and I'm wearing my watch. Now, if you notice, the RISI, or the power rating, is getting bigger as I'm moving away. It is sensitive enough that I can start moving my watch in any direction, and it's going to alter the power rating almost immediately. So as I start to walk away, it gets bigger. As I get closer, it gets smaller. Put this visualization in with the hash marks or the pound sign to kind of give you a better representation. But as you're tracking someone, you're literally tracking them down to the I'm up on top of you with this device. And this is just off the internal radio. If I go to one of the other radios, I can start tracking people from in this room. If I put a panel antenna on this, I can track people within the hotel. Now, Bluetooth device that's on you all the time, that is now fully trackable, gets a bit scary. So there's some use cases on this that we can talk about on stage, and there's some use cases that we can talk about in other places. But let's just talk about it in terms of security of yourself. That device that you're carrying has a MAC address that is standard that you can't alter. In most devices, you can change your MAC address. It's got the ability to answer to a ping whether or not you want it to or not. So, one defense against this, those of you that have Android devices, if you go into developer mode, you have the ability with your Bluetooth radio to actually say, I only want to make X connections at a time. And those X connections could be 1, 2, 20, whatever it is. Typically about 7 is where you start to degrade some signal. But you can actually alter it so that if you know you have headphones and you have a car, I'm only going to allow that device to connect to 2 devices, and it won't answer the ping. Alternatively, if you are super, super scared of being followed and tracked, taking this tool and using it to your advantage. So what we found is if you have a Raspberry Pi with a battery pack and you run a script against yourself, running it on a continuous basis, you basically hold up all of the sockets that are available for ping, and your device isn't trackable. I don't necessarily love this as a solution. I think it's pretty dirty. I don't think it's extremely easy. And who's going to always remember to grab a Raspberry Pi, start a script, stick it in your bag, and carry it with you? Turning Bluetooth off does fix this. Problem I have with that answer is we've been saying that for 10 years, and nobody listens. So why is anybody going to listen now? So if you have people that you work with that you're trying to protect, now let's forget about yourself because, we're all at a security conference, so we're all uber paranoid, and, we patch all of our stuff, and we turn our radios off when we're not using them, and do all these things that we tell people to do. This gives really? No, you don't at all? You sure? Oh, all right. Having the ability to give people an example of this is going to give you the ability to get some awareness out there. There's never been, that we've seen in the industry, a reason that people should absolutely turn things off. We tell people all the time, you have wired headphones, turn your Bluetooth off when you're on a plane. A plane is a big metal tube with signals bouncing around, and there's hackers on a plane. Anybody heard of that before? Okay, right? So you have 3 hours, or if you're flying cross country, 6 hours with a laptop and the internal radios. You get some hackers that know what they're doing and get a little bored over that 6 hours, weird stuff starts to happen. I mean, Sidedragon flew a plane sideways apparently, and the FBI met him at the gate. It's open Ethernet ports. By the way, that whole story is mostly fake, not completely fake, and he did try and disclose that. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to disclose a vulnerability in an entire suite of tools that there really isn't a lot of mitigation on. Now, to that end, if you are, any pen testers here? Anybody clicks their BICs on a regular basis to test it, make sure it works? Yeah, still right with those things? This is a really nice tool to add to your arsenal. Having the ability to track someone to a place, if it's within your rules of engagement, that is less protected than where they work, if you can get approval to do it. And we've gotten approval quite a few times in recent years on getting CEOs in play, CIOs, CFOs, CTOs, that kind of thing, heads of networking, heads of administration, those. To be able to say, hey, you know what, your vulnerabilities extend well beyond just the workplace. They extend back to those people's residence houses. Again, everybody gets a little touchy-feely about that. I don't want them coming to my house. Well, do you think the bad guys care if you want them coming to your house? I mean, I always have been a bit paranoid. And we were setting up the capture the flag about 5 or 6 years ago. Actually, Justin in the back of the room was sitting in my kitchen with me. And we were testing the capture the flags. Well, next thing I know, I find out there was a pizza car out front, and we got pizza, and I looked outside. There's a pickup truck. I was like, whatever. I'm going to live on a cul-de-sac. Turns out it was one of the contestants from the capture the flag sitting outside expecting us to be setting things up, and he got it. And he did amazing. We ended up having to flip the keys that morning so that they couldn't win based on just sitting there and collecting handshakes. So to think you may not get followed isn't exactly a viable solution these days, because all of us have something interesting to give up to someone else, and we're probably not as protected at home as we probably think we are. One of the use cases we use with this, and I'll let your imaginations kind of run, is there's a building or a compound or a fort or a set of fences, and inside of those fences are some people that we want to get access to. Well, we don't know who's in the building because we don't have global surveillance all the time, and they've got underground entrances into the building, but we want to know who's inside. So what we do is we scan across, and we look for Bluetooth devices, we look for Wi-Fi devices, we look for probes. Then we go up the road a little ways where we know one of those vehicles may leave, and we turn on Blue Sonar based on those MAC addresses, and we wait for that device to get close to us. We now can get a picture of and or talk to and or do whatever. You guys can decide how that wants to work without ever breaking a single law, because sniffing Bluetooth hasn't been deemed illegal yet. Sniffing cell phones is, but I can still track you on your cell phone without breaking any laws. Sniffing Wi-Fi, sort of illegal thanks to Google, but we're not breaking anything. We're literally just using layer 2 to find a device. So there's a lot of places where this could be really helpful. We do run this as one of the foxes. We've got a Samsung Galaxy that we run throughout the building. People need to look for. And that is a completely unmodified, fully patched, regular, fully working Samsung device that is on, but nothing else. And they are able to track it pretty quick, almost faster than some of the other Bluetooth devices. So again, we're going to write security down as an answer, but we're going to actually talk about it in different terms. This is kind of creepy. If somebody wants to find you, everybody's got their own internal use cases. Some people don't want to be found by other people, whether it be an ex, boyfriend, girlfriend, friend, ex-customer, there's all kinds of reasons that you want to make sure that things are protected from your perspective. So that's Blue Sonar. Blue Sonar is really powerful. It is, like I said, it's in Pentoo. It's also available on GitHub. It is extremely powerful, and it will track anything you tell it to track. Within the tool, I just wanted to kind of show a couple things because there are some options here, which is different from some of the other things we run. It just runs with Blue Sonar. So you've got some options here. So you can specify a target, which obviously we're going to want to. You tell it how much you want it to sleep. So let's say that you have a long-term thing that you're trying to find. Letting it sleep for a second is okay. Letting it sleep for like a quarter of a second means it's probing constantly. It's ping flooding the air, which is how that tool, part of the tool works, and it gives you as much information as you can get. You can tell it which device you want it to run off of within your system, whether you want to run HCI 0, HCI 1, 2, 3, 4, or 20. We had a contest that we ran down in North Carolina, and somebody had one of these 10-port hubs full of USB devices sniffing multiple MAC addresses simultaneously. They ended up knocking it out of the park with like 6 devices in 15 or 20 minutes. We were working that outside on a 40-acre plot with houses and housing and buildings and all kinds of things, and they were able to just clear the place very, very quickly. You can tell it to sleep between things. So let's say you want to be quieter for whatever reason you need to. It'll sleep for you. And then verbose mode, which actually, let's see, where's the demo? See if I can do, yeah, there we go. Tag V. So it's flying through, and the watch isn't even able to keep up with the amount of pings that it's throwing at it, and this is giving you all the information as you go. Now, you can still see the bar, which is why we did the red and white, because as soon as it goes all red, you can't really see it anymore. This can be helpful if you're doing any type of troubleshooting or you're really trying to get a good distance vector for yourself. At the end, it tells you what the minimum and the max RSSI or power rating was. 0 when I was like literally right up on it, negative 29 when I pulled it back. So very capable, very fast tool, because all it's doing is using internal tools that most Linux distributions already have. So that's one thing. Now, what I'm about to show you isn't brand new, and I apologize for that. But the implementation of it is absolutely amazing, and I don't think a lot of people know about it. Who has actually heard of MouseJack? Read about it? Okay. Who's done it? Okay. Most people haven't because A, flashing the firmware on these radios was a royal pain in the butt. Getting the radios was even more difficult until recently. But on top of that, it wasn't well known. Now, what MouseJack does is it allows you to take over any device running a wireless mouse and keyboard that's within a list of vulnerable devices. Those vulnerable devices are most Logitech. Anybody ever use a Logitech mouse or keyboard? Yeah. Microsoft and Dell. Okay? There's other wireless mice and keyboards out there, but not a ton. So what we found is with this, it was a very difficult tool to use, but we love RF. We love doing radio frequency work, so I was like, let's figure it out. So Rick, and again, Zero Chaos, guy that writes Pentoo, can't give him enough love or credit, and he would be here, but he's at home at some sort of breakfast with Santa or something this week, I don't know. He was like, you know what, let's make this easy. So he took MouseJack, and he implemented it directly into Pentoo. Again, Pentoo is a live distribution. You can pull it down online. You can run it as a live CD. You don't have to install it. Gen 2 is tough to use. Anybody that was in the class yesterday, it took us a little while to get everybody up to speed. The learning curve is angled this way. Most learning curves are this way. It's kind of a backwards learning curve. You got to go backwards, forget everything you know, and then start moving forward. But for specific tools, it does a great job. Typing MouseJack from a root terminal tells you the firmwares that are supported. Nordic Semiconductor bootloader, the Crazy Radio PA firmware, RF Storm Research, and Logitech basic dongles. So the unified dongles that Logitech sells can now be flashed directly out of Pentoo with one click of a button. So basically, you install the bus, you put it into your USB port, MouseJack Logitech install, and it will flash that device for you. So we don't have to go through any firmware, any crazy updates, anything outside of just running a command. Also implemented recently was Jacket. Jacket is a tool that will allow you to take over a mouse and keyboard while it's running. Any mouse and keyboard. We run hardened Pentoo, updating the kernel on a regular basis, and making massive modifications to it regularly. We were testing it yesterday in class before the class started. Anybody know Wasabi? He's sitting there with this stuff. I was like, hey, dude, here, do me a favor, plug my mouse in for you. He's like, all right. He had the slides up that we were doing. I just ran literally an open notebook, start new page with a Ducky script. Ducky scripts, for those that don't know, Hack5 wrote a ducky language years ago that is basically kind of a combination of really ugly Perl and some basic and some ways of interpreting commands in pretty Darren-friendly, usable language. And I love you, Darren. And it'll just take those scripts. So the ducky script I had was literally open up a notebook and say, hello world. While I'm watching his screen, the slides that I was working on, he was working on too. New slide opened up, it typed hello world. Hardened Gentoo with slides open, and it started running into it. Now, that means that sudo open terminal xterm, sudo su, ssh, reverse shell back to whatever, and give me a port and a screen on that device would just be as easy as him using that mouse for me. So completely implemented into Pentoo, fully functional, and jokingly tested. I was carrying around a Windows machine just so that I could do the testing on this. Turns out I don't even need to do that. It works on Macs, Linux, and Windows, and anything that will run the mouse driver. Now that being said, this is what happens when you do it. So instead of actually, talking about it, let's try it. I got a screen somewhere. Let's just use this one. CD, home user, scripts, jacket, tech, reset. So when you type in reset, if you know how to type, reset, what it does is it puts the radio back into a default mode. If you just run the script and you run it again and run it again, it's already in an injection mode. So if you reset every time, it seems to work better. PT, ducky. All right, is this going to be green again? That would be really sad if it was. Okay, cool. So I have this plugged in. Is it turned on? Yep. Oh, there we go. All right, so it's already picking up. Now, this might be me, it might not be. I actually don't know. But it's going to scan out for anything running a wireless mouse and keyboard. Now, this is using the crazy PA radio with a 2.4 gigahertz, like 5.5 dBi antenna. So it's getting some decent range. So let's just hit Control-C, and it's going to say, which you can't read here, select all, or select, what happened? Oh, it stopped. Oh, that stinks. See, live demos never work. Let's see if I fix it up. What happened here? Hence why we never do live demos. It's falling out for some reason. Okay, so live demos fail. Awesome. I didn't abort to the demo guides properly. But what it's going to do, and what it typically does, and I need to figure out why it's not working. Oh, it's probably because it's on the same computer. That's why. Anybody have a computer? I won't do that to you because I actually don't know what it's going to do on a device that's not one that's preset on this one. It's going to go out and it's going to implement that command on that device. Like I said, with a Windows device on a separate system, it's going to actually pop it into a terminal, open it up, and go from there. Let's see. So this is what the screen looks like when it works properly. It'll actually, and this may not actually be this device, it'll actually label it as a Logitech HID device. It gives you the packets that it's running. It gives you the information. Those packets can actually be replayed, which is another script you can run, basically replay. It's going to then send the attack to that address, which is the MAC address of the USB, and then it's going to run the attack. In this particular instance, that was the one we ran against Wasabi, and it did take well. It's a really, really cool implementation. It's not a new tool. I'm not in any way saying that this is new or invented by us in any way, shape, or form. But it was implemented into Pentoo very recently, and it works really, really well. So if you don't want to go out and buy a new dongle, and you already have a USB device and a Logitech device, you have the ability to use that right away, right out of the box. Now, that being said, you will lose the ability to use that mouse and keyboard, but if you already know it's vulnerable, do you really want to keep it anyway? So RF hunting and tracking. So we take all this information, and we put it into a big package. And that big package is this particular target, because you get your documentation, you take your notes. This particular target has these radios, these wireless keyboards, these MAC addresses, and we put that into a script. So what you end up doing is you pull up to whatever your target is. You've got your laptop, your Raspberry Pi, whatever it is that you're using as your attack machine in your bag. You've got phone SSH'd into it. You've got all your stuff preset, ready to go. You're clicking it off your phone. You could be sitting in the lobby of the place that you're working with or against and start running these attacks. But you need to make sure that you're using absolutely the right radios, the right antennas, and the right configuration and setup. The only way to do this is to test your equipment. And this is my little soapbox, and you guys are here, and not everybody's leaving, so I'm going to tell you about it. Testing your equipment is so vital. Right, Asaka? Testing your equipment before you get to a conference. So what we find is people come into the conference, we set up the wireless capture the flag to allow people to have a shooting range, to have a target set to test all this stuff. Well, what they end up doing, because everybody's always prepared for these kinds of things, they show up that day, they're still loading the operating system, they just bought new radios, they just bought new antennas, and they have no idea what they do. They're getting results, and they're like, I don't know if this is right or wrong. What we recommend people do is they actually test their equipment. The best way that we have found to test your equipment is outside in a known environment, typically like a football field or something that's labeled and marked. You stand at one end with your radios, with your antennas, with your configurations and setups. You put a router or something at the other end, a Bluetooth device, a router, a keyboard and mouse, whatever it is you're testing, and you stand at 100 yards away. You get a reading. You walk up to 95 yards away, you get a reading. They're already marked for you. It's easy. And you take those readings and you write them down. Anybody ever do any shooting, like sniper shooting? You have a dope scope book, right, where you actually have all of your data. Windage, time, angle, whatever it is, humidity, wind, all of these things go into play. Well, if you're doing this and it's something that you enjoy and or want to do professionally, it's really helpful to know how your equipment's going to react. So you get that information, and now all of a sudden you know with this radio and this antenna combo and this laptop, I can get a quarter mile away from a target and still get really good data. Or I know with this setup, I've got to be literally right on top of them, and sometimes that's better than having that distance and standoff. So you go through this, you get your power readings with whatever tool you're running with, in the example of AeroDump, and then you take really good notes, and you hold on to those notes, and you label your antennas. There's a guy that we had a talk at DEF CON that was an absolute abomination, but the talk itself brought out some really good information, one of which was there was a guy who actually names every one of his radios. He names every one of his antennas. Now, his names were kind of silly and pretty funny, and I don't know that they're good for public consumption. But he knew exactly what radio did what with what antenna and what setup and what configuration, down to what hub he was using based on the power that was coming out of that hub and the measurements and everything else. That guy was able to target within feet of most of his targets. And again, when we're dealing with this type of stuff, you don't want to necessarily, let's say you have a ducky script that's going to do a reverse shell back to you and you have a target and you know what you're looking for. Well, you don't want to send it to the wrong person. You don't want to send it to the admin when you're going after the sysadmin. You don't want to send it to the wrong person because you're looking for specific data. So having this kind of information in the targeting distance is huge. When you're doing direction finding, again, I still believe it and I say it. Anybody that's heard me speak has always heard me say this, so I apologize for those that have heard it. Direction finding is the single most important tool and or capability you can have in wireless. Whether it is RF from a software-defined radio perspective, 2.4 gigahertz radios, 5 gigahertz, Bluetooth, whatever have you, having the ability to direction find means from defensive, you can find a rogue access point. You can find a loud talker. You can find somebody on your network. I was called up to a place in New York. It was like the size of all three of these rooms together, tables, not even cubes, lined up. It was a code factory. Literally, they were just building out code. 400,000 square feet of people just sitting, and there was a rogue device. They called me up, like, we can't find it. We have no idea what to do. So I did some stuff, pulled out some data, found where roughly, within this much space where the data was, pulled out this little tiny log antenna that was, highly directional, walked up to the seat where I thought it was. The guy was with me. He's like, there's no way you did this. I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, are you carrying a MiFi with you? The guy's like, oh, yeah. The Wi-Fi here is horrible. I have to use it. It's like, here's your device. They walked out. They confiscated it. They walked out. Apparently, that guy was stealing code. So it worked out well, but it's not a skill that everybody can just do. Walk into a space like this and find Osaka's radio. I keep picking on her because we pick on her all the time. But find the device that she's using. Finding a rogue access point that's broadcasting out your SSID at work could be helpful. It could make you kind of important around there. So the best way to do it's 2 radios. It can be done with 1. 2 radios is ideal. 1 with a directional antenna, 1 with an omni antenna. You stand in a space and you literally walk in a circle. As you're going in that circle, when the directional has the same power rating change as your omni, you're facing the right direction. Now the numbers are going to be off. You're going to have a stronger signal with your directional than you are with your omni when you're on the right vector. But as soon as you have that, you now know, okay, I need to walk in this direction, and I'm about, I don't know, 100 yards away based on my signal. So I put the omni down and start walking. Well, as soon as that signal changes, I know that I need to change my vector. It's very similar to following a compass. You tell people that are in the woods, trust your compass. Well, in this case, trust your radios, trust the output, but only when you know what the output's going to say and you know that it's predictable for you. So once the power setting gets into like the neg 30s, and this is again with a tool called AeroDump, which I can show if we have time at the end. But once you get to about negative 30 from an RSSI or power rating, you're within touching range. Now it might be, you know, this much space here, but you're able to get close enough up that you can actually then really start to judge. Then you get the crappiest, absolute worst craptastic antenna you can find. Told Wasabi this. He ended up taking a BNC connector, siliconing in a paper clip, and putting it on his radio. Well, it takes the ohm weight, it takes the load off of your radio, but you've got to be within feet of what you're looking for to find it. So the best stuff is nice initially, but then you get down to the crappiest stuff you have or the lowest power so that you can get close enough to actually start seeing things. Then once you're operationally close to the target, touch, destroy, gather information, do whatever it is you need to do. Your next steps are going to depend on what you're trying to do. Wireless targeting with highly directional is very similar to being a sniper. So you have somebody that's helping watch, you have your system, you have your vector, and you have your target, and you start moving in. From a distance, wireless and RF targeting is very difficult. You literally have to have lasers and or GPSs to do it. But with the right team, with the right views, with the right scopes, you can actually get wireless 2 or 3 miles. We did a line of sight contest at DEF CON. God, it was like DEF CON 11 or 12. And the group that won rented a hot air balloon, flew it over the horizon, and made a wireless B shot, and actually got pings across, I think it was like 25 miles. It was insane. But they understood wireless enough to know that they had to get above the horizon, they had to get outside of the Fade and Fresnel zones, and they made the shot, and it worked. Again, I keep going back to it because it's important. Go out, try it. If you've got radios with you, go do it. Pen, paper, radio, laptop, endpoint target. See what you can find. Have fun. These are our coins. We've been doing coins for a couple years. We are giving out coins to the winner of the Wireless Capture the Flag. We are also doing a black badge this year, again, for BSides. Thank you, BSides. So if you win, black badge, lifetime admission. I think somebody in the audience may have one. I don't know, the same person I've been picking on. Osaka, take a bow. All right, sit back down. Oh, you already did? And we've got some really cool sponsors that sell a lot of the really cool stuff that we sell, that we show. They've got some amazing equipment. Simple Wi-Fi is some of the best antennas out there. Hack 5, thank you. You know, Pentoo and all the others. So that's what I got. Any questions? Yes? Uh-huh. It is only pinging if there were a Bluetooth intrusion detection system that was functional and worked well, it would see the pings. It wouldn't look a whole lot different than the heartbeat threshold that a device would have if it's connecting to something else. Yes, you would be relatively vulnerable if the right instrumentation was in place. Somebody back there said they have an IDS for Bluetooth. I'd love to see it. But again, be curious to see what it looks like in that phase. But I have not seen one yet. Yes? I am 100% not a lawyer. From the way that I've read the IEEE standard and the laws as they stand, you're not recording data, you're not intercepting data, and you're not doing anything encrypted or unencrypted. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So Google got in trouble for doing location with wireless and collection. Correct. In that particular instance, again, I would talk to your local lawyers because every state has their own laws. If you're passive, it's hard to do anything wrong. It's not I'm not saying it's legal. It's hard. Exactly. If you're doing this professionally, again, we always have a very, very, very detailed rules of engagement with everything we're doing, and we get permission down to literally, I might pick up somebody's personal device if I'm doing something. We're not going to use it, but we might pick it up, and we have to. Absolutely. Yeah, that get out of jail free card's important, especially when jail exists. The black helicopters do exist. Now, picking up passive signals is really hard to do by anything. So, as long as you're not transmitting and you're not injecting and you're not trying to decrypt, usually you're okay. It depends on the jurisdiction. Did I skirt that question well enough? Any other questions that don't involve a lawyer? I might have to call one in a minute. Cool. Thank you.